Hello, everybody. Just started the recording. If you're just joining us now, I am actually your host, and I am going to be your speaker for the day as well. And, before I get into my training, my story for the day, I just wanted to talk about, tomorrow is our first day of the national conference, and this is happening going to be 28th through the 30th, so Thursday through Saturday. And I'm sure many of you are already here in Salt Lake City. If not, you're on your way, or, but we should still be, even one day before, we should still be building for the cash recovery party, because we're going to have none other than Bob Snyder, Christian George, Mark Kohler, some of our best instructors who are going to be running this event on how we can take back the cash that, we've been losing in our lives, and also present this opportunity to our guests who, for many of them, they're going to be seeing this for the very first time. Now, some of you know me, some of you don't. So I'm going to kind of just give you a backstory of how I first got started with Renatus and what I was doing before I got started, and kind of share with you some lessons that I've learned along the way over the last few years here. Now, growing up, I always had this dream, this strong conviction, this dream as a teenager that I wanted to become the president of the United States someday. And, the family I grew up in was very much focused on education, being an intellectual, being educated, reading a lot of books, attending, different types of live events. And, in fact, it's funny, when I was growing up, with my dad, we used to always do this thing called the capital game, where my dad would ask me a question: what's the capital of this country? What's the capital of this country? And, that's the kind of environment I grew up in, just this trivia, a lot of these kinds of things. And so I don't know, from growing up, I had these big ambitions. I wanted to become president. And I knew that in order to become the president of the United States of America, I knew I had to be successful in something, because you don't just kind of go from, college to, becoming the president of the United States. There's a lot of things that you have to do along the way. And I was reading biographies of great people who had become the presidents. And I knew that, I had to become successful in something first before I could ever do this. And I knew I had to become successful. But in my upbringing, though, I was always taught that in order to become successful, you had to get good grades, right? You had to do well in school. You had to do good in high school. You had to do good in college. So you had to get good grades in order to get a good job, right? And my idea of success was just getting a good job, coming up, going up the corporate ladder, and, retiring with, millions of dollars. That's what I thought it was. And this idea of being an entrepreneur that, a lot of us here at Renatus are doing, this idea was very foreign to me. I thought it was something where, you had to be, at least a decade, working for somebody else and making them rich before you could ever, make money and, do big things. I thought that was my idea. And so, I worked really hard, and I got the good grades, and I got into the #1 university in the world, Oxford University. And, after graduation, I did what I thought would be the successful thing to do, is to find a job. And that's actually the reason I moved out here to Salt Lake City a little over 2 years ago. And I moved out here to Salt Lake for a job in finance. And because, I was taught that, if you want to make money, you got to work in finance. But little did I know that having a W-2 job, working for someone else, I had to give away at least 1/3 of my paycheck to the IRS, to the government. And I just thought that was like a normal thing. I'm like, oh, all these people who are successful, it's just part of life. You just have to give away part of a big chunk of your money to the government. But within my first week of working at this new job, and you have to remember, this was my first real job out of college. My first real job, the first time I was actually receiving a salary. And I just wasn't used to someone bossing me around, telling me what to do, telling me what time to come into work, what time to leave, when to take my lunch break. these were all foreign things to me. So when I started, just having to adapt to this environment, it killed me. It was like I felt like a salary slave. I felt like a dog in a cage. I needed to find a way out. But luckily around this time, that's when I found Renatus. It was right around the time that I actually moved here to Salt Lake. I was just going on Google. I think I was on meetup.com, and I was talking like, who's doing real estate here? Because I knew that, these different books I had read, they all said, rich people, if you want to become rich, if you want to become successful, you have to invest in real estate. And so, I found out about this group locally here that was just doing real estate transactions. And I came down to one of their events, just like many of you. And after that first presentation, that first exposure, the 4 pillars of wealth, and now it's the 5 pillars, but back then it was the 4 pillars. I was just blown away with how they taught me how I was able to pay down student debts. Because I had a ton of student debts from my university, and that was a big thing for me. And the velocity banking that I learned that day changed my life, because I realized that I'd been paying so much money in interest, for this student debt that I could have avoided. And not only this, I think one of the even bigger takeaways for me was that during the presentation, when they showed the difference between the employee mindset versus the wealthy mindset, that's what changed it all for me. Because like I was telling you, the employee mindset was really the mindset that I was in. It was this mindset that you had to go to work from 9 to 5 or 9 to 6. You had to put in your time, yet you had to move up the corporate ladder. And, you were just going to somehow, retirement was just, you would just save for retirement just by doing that. That was my idea. And I'm like, I'll move up the corporate ladder. I'll become successful like that. I'll become CEO of a company. And eventually someday I'll become president of the United States. That's what my idea was. And, I also learned that paying 1/3 of your paycheck in taxes was a normal thing. But anyways, this realization, when I came down to Renatus and I saw the presentation, and I realized that my entire mindset was just a mirage with many unknowns. I had no idea how I was going to pay down my student debt, no idea how I was going to become, financially independent. And the Renatus Education is really what showed me that this is possible. I don't have to wait a decade to start my own business. I don't have to wait a decade to save on taxes. I don't have to wait the next, 30, 40, 50 years to pay down my student loan. This is something that I can start doing right away. And I was also around this time, I was having these doubts. I was like, being this much in debt, me paying this much in taxes, it's inhibiting me to think about, my life achievements, how I'm going to provide for myself and my future family, how I'm going to buy a house, all these different things. And Renatus, the Renatus Education is really what changed it all for me. So, I decided, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to sign up, I'm going to, get my Extreme Plus combo, and I'm just going to get to work. And you have to remember, around this time, parallelly, I still have to hold on to my W-2, my corporate job, my finance job. So it wasn't like I was just a full-time, I had all the time in the world to just build this real estate and, this marketing business. So, but, I plugged into the system. I started watching the classes, and I remember, this was, 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. In fact, many of the classes I was watching were just on the way to work. If you guys are familiar with the Salt Lake area, my job was down in Lehigh, which is about a half hour away from where I live. I live here in Salt Lake. So I realized, I had been wasting that time just, listening to music or something like that. So I started playing the Renatus classes just on my way to work and on my way back. So many of you who are just getting started with us, if you're trying to look for how am I gonna have time to do this, your commute, that's a great way to take advantage of the time that you already have available to invest it in yourself, in your mind, in your mindset, to grow that mindset. And that's exactly what I was doing. I was listening to a lot of the books on, Michael's Audible account. I was trying to get into that wealthy mindset that I didn't have before. So anyways, I was, attending all the events every single week. Never missed, an opportunity presentation. I mean, I did miss a few, but for the most part, I didn't miss them. I was going every week, building my network, and it took me about 6 months from when I actually joined Renatus to actually get into my first real estate deal. And, I want to tell you guys a little bit about that, especially for, the new people who might be on this call who are thinking, oh, I've already been in Renatus for a few months and I don't see myself getting into a deal. And, and it really, I think what it depends on is what are you capable of, right? There's so many, there's so many examples of people here at Renatus who have been able to get into a deal, in 3 months, 6 months, and it doesn't take like a year or two, but for some people it might. It all depends on how much are you willing to put in, because if you made a commitment today that I'm going to get into my first deal within the next 3 months, right? It's definitely possible. I want to share with you a little bit of my story of how I was able to do that. Like I was telling you, I was starting to build my Renatus network. I was just kind of letting people know that, hey, I'm doing real estate. I made it apparent to people. And I was actually able to find my first real estate deal, which was a wholesale deal just within the Renatus community. So I didn't even have to go outside. I didn't have to go to these different real estate events that are around the city or anything like that. Just right here at Renatus, I was able to get into my first deal. And, I remember once I found this deal, I was just going around to people and saying, hey, look, I got this great deal. Who is willing? I showed it in a way where it was in a benefit for an investor to invest in me, right? So I showed it in a way in which, this is not really about me. This is about, I was going around to investors and saying, hey, look, this is the return you can get on this deal. This is the profit you can make, right? I was putting it in terms of their best interest. And of course, this is the first time I'm doing this. Of course, I'm making a lot of mistakes. I might be saying some things wrong here and there, but I think that, if people can see that you're committed, even if it's your first deal, you're committed to making it a success. I think it's definitely possible for you to find investors. And so anyways, I started, shopping this deal around. I found some investors just here. In fact, my first deal was 100% financed just by Renatus community members. I didn't even have to go outside of the community to do this, which is why we have such a powerful network here at Renatus. We don't have to, necessarily go out, to different networking events and join like these different online groups. We can, and it will be an additional benefit. We don't have to. And especially if you're in a city where maybe your Renatus chapter isn't as big, then you have the opportunity to start that network, to start that community right where you live, right? So anyways, so my story is kind of that I was still working this corporate job in finance while I was implementing the velocity banking, paying down, my student debt. I was working on this real estate deal, and I was able to find some investors that were actually, they were willing to invest in my long-term potential. Like I had to, basically what I was doing was I was trying to build a vision for how before I even completed my first deal, before I even did my first deal, that I was going to be successful in real estate. And I did that by showing them a plan. I showed these investors a plan that, hey, over the next year, this is the kind of deals I'm going to be involved in. This is how much money I can make for you and me, because it has to be a win-win. And because I did spend a lot of time developing that relationship capital, I was able to find some investors that allowed me to quit my job before I even completed my first real estate deal. Now, I wouldn't necessarily suggest that for, I don't know your particular situation, if you're in a position to do that, but that's the way that I did it, because I had that I had that belief that the Renatus education, I had so much belief in the Renatus education that it would provide success for me, that I was able to kind of show that to these investors. And it really was the Renatus education, right? It really was the Renatus education that allowed me to do that. So I quit my job within about 10 months of starting it, within about 10 months of starting Renatus, and I was able to complete my first profitable real estate deal. And to be honest, that's really what gave me the confidence to go out and really, start building my business. That first real estate deal, it provided me so much confidence, because now I can go back to these same investors and, say, hey, now I got an even bigger deal for you. And this allowed me today, I'm actually working on a $1 million deal. It's actually a fix and flip real estate deal right now as we're speaking. And, it was because I was able to, build this vision for my investors, right? I was able to build this vision for my investors and show them that the Renatus education, the Renatus network that I had was what would be, that's what would allow this transaction to be successful, and a lot of the investors are just people who are here part of Renatus. So I guess, what I'm trying to say here is that I believed in the Renatus education when I joined in. Okay? I believed in the Renatus education when I joined in, but now I know it works, right? I know it works, which is why I wanted to share this story with you. I know it works. Because I know it works, it's now given me the belief and the conviction to be able to share this opportunity with other people, because I wasn't always doing that. I wasn't always going on, and marketing the Renatus education. But once I started seeing that, hey, this is working for me, this is not just, it went from belief to knowing. And that transition is what allowed me to go out and start sharing this opportunity, with other people. And it inspired me. It inspired me in such a way that I don't feel like when I go out and start telling, whether it's warm market or cold market, I don't feel like I'm selling anything. I feel like I'm providing an opportunity for people. And I really like, the 4 core beliefs we have here at Renatus, that Renatus is the best income opportunity in the country. Everybody needs Renatus. We are doing them a favor, and it's their loss if they say no. So that, when I started, going through this, I know many of you who are on this call, you might have also gone through the EMT. And, I learned a lot of these kind of core beliefs and these core convictions to have, because I really think that if you're not convinced yourself that Renatus is the best income opportunity in the country and everybody needs it, you're not gonna go out there. You're not gonna go out there and start telling people about it. And you're not going to be able to build your team or start building your team. So I think it's crucial to not only be watching the education, but also apply it. Go out there, go start taking action. I think the more action that you start taking, the more that you're going to be able to transition from this belief to knowing that this is something that actually is going to work for you. But that is my backstory. Some of you know that story, some of you don't, but I just wanted to share that with you all today. It's an incredible honor to be able to come on this morning call to share my story with you. And I'm actually going to be ending the call early today. And I hope a lot of you are here already in Salt Lake City. If not, hope you're coming in tomorrow. And I really look forward to meeting a lot of you at the national conference, because I've got to say, I've attended 2 national conferences now, and every single time I go to one of these, it's just the energy, the level of excitement that's there. It rubs off on you, right? And it lasts. It's almost like it becomes a part of you, and it sticks with you even after you leave the conference, and it lasts for a long time. So I'm really excited to meet all of you there and hear your stories, right? Because the more we're able to share our stories with each other, we're going to be able to help build each other's businesses. And, I'm really looking forward to meeting a lot of you there. And yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and end the call now. And yeah, have a great day and see you all at Nationals.
Hey, Abhi.